Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Lately, it really feels like we've been surrounded by headlines screaming about ethical failures. Think back to those massive corporate scandals, the early 2000s, Enron, Tyco, WorldCom. It just left this feeling that, well, ethics in business had somehow vanished. So today, we're diving deep into a core question. How did we actually get here to a point where trust is so low? And maybe, is there a universal, simple way for you to navigate these complex ethical waters, whether you're at work, at home, anywhere else, really?
Right. And to unpack that, we're drawing heavily from John C. Maxwell's insights. Very powerful stuff. His central argument, and what we'll truly explore today, is actually quite simple yet profound. He says, there's no such thing as business ethics, there's only ethics. So he challenges us to consider, well, one single standard for all our decisions, no matter the context.
That's a pretty bold idea, isn't it? Our mission today, then, is to give you a clear understanding of the surprising truths behind why ethical failures happen. And then, maybe more importantly, to reveal a practical, powerful rule you can apply, something to guide your own life and work.
Okay, let's unpack this. When we look back, the beginning of the 21st century, those corporate scandals really sent shockwaves through the economy. What were some of maybe the most egregious examples that really chipped away at public trust? And what was the ripple effect for, everyday people?
Well, the scale was just staggering, really. Take Enron, for instance. They inflated their income by over $500 million, and meanwhile, their executives, they were quietly selling off $1 billion in stock. But employees, on the other hand, they were urged to hold on to their shares.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, only to watch their retirement savings just evaporate when the company collapsed. Wiped out over $60 billion for investors. Then you have WorldCom. They overstated profits by over $7 billion. That directly led to 17,000 job losses.
17,000 people. Exactly. These weren't just abstract numbers. They meant real people losing their jobs, their futures. And, it wasn't just corporate boardrooms either. We saw this erosion of trust, well, pretty much everywhere. The public revelations of abuses within the Catholic Church, for example, that shook whole communities. Even respected figures like Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Stephen Ambrose faced plagiarism accusations.
Right, now I remember that.
And let's not forget the Winter Olympics figure skating scandal, remember that? Where a judge admitted her decision was coerced. That impacts the integrity of the whole sport. These incidents just made it clear this wasn't a problem confined to one sector, it was broader.
And that widespread feeling of betrayal, it really showed up in the polls.
Right.
I remember reading results from George Barna back then, and they were frankly abysmal. Only a tiny 3% of people had complete confidence that executives of large corporations would consistently make morally appropriate decisions. Even elected officials, same low 3%. Teachers, the most trusted group, only managed 14% confidence. It's hard to imagine trust falling much lower than that, really.
So if trust was basically at rock bottom, the big question is, why? Why do people make these unethical choices in the first place? Maxwell points to 3 core reasons. The first one, it's simply convenience.
Convenience. How so?
It's about choosing the easy path over the right one. Think about it. When a cashier gives you too much change, what do? Do you correct them? Or maybe if a small, convenient lie could cover a mistake, do you tell it? These are little personal ethics tests, and we often fail them because cutting corners or rationalizing a quick fix just feels easier in the moment. The second reason is that powerful desire to win. There's this pervasive belief out there that being ethical somehow limits your success.
The old good guys finish last idea.
Exactly. I remember an anecdote about an Atlanta Business Chronicle conference. A senior VP suggested an ethics session for a sales meeting. The room just went silent. The CEO later explained that, well, ethics is such a negative subject for a motivational sales event.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. This mindset, as Henry Adams put it way back, views morality as a private and costly luxury. When winning feels like it requires compromising, that becomes a real dilemma for people. And the third factor is situational ethics. You could call it rationalization with relativism.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It's where you decide what's right or wrong based on what feels good or is convenient right then in that specific moment, instead of sticking to a fixed moral compass. This idea, it really gained traction in the 1960s with Dr. Joseph Fletcher's book, Situation Ethics. He actually argued that love can justify anything, lying, cheating, stealing, even murder.
That sounds dangerous.
It can lead to what Maxwell calls ethical chaos, where everyone's operating with their own kind of ever-changing standards. Yep. It essentially means our decisions define ethics instead of ethics guiding our decisions, a total flip.
Thankfully, it does feel like there's maybe a real change in the wind now. A growing desire for integrity in the marketplace, perhaps. Executive recruiters like Heydrich and Struggles, they're actively saying things like, glamour and glitz are out. Transparency in terms of ethics, values, and goals is in. Even big players like Bank One are consciously putting ethics-type questions into their hiring process.
That's true. People are recognizing that for long-term success, something fundamental has to shift. But despite this growing desire, many of the current marketplace solutions are just, well, they're falling short.
Not quite.
First, you've got remedial ethics, companies offering online classes, dense manuals. But as observer Joan Ryan pointed out, it's often more about fulfilling a legal requirement, a way to potentially get reduced fines under federal guidelines.
So it's not necessarily about genuinely changing behavior or fostering a truly ethical culture.
Right. Not always.
Yeah.
Then there's what management consultant Frank J. Navran calls an ethical flea dip.
A flea dip?
Yeah, it's where companies deal with individual bad actions when they get caught. But they don't change the underlying system, the environment that actually encourages or maybe even rewards unethical behavior.
So treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Exactly. So the problem just keeps coming back. And finally, many organizations simply rely on the law as their only ethical standard. Dell CEO Kevin Rollins paraphrased Alexander Solzhenitsyn, making a really powerful point. A society where the rule of law is the only standard of ethical behavior is equally bad.
That's strong.
He emphasized that we have to aspire to something higher, something beyond just what's technically legal. Because let's face it, legality doesn't always equal morality.
It's so easy to point fingers at corporations and leaders, isn't it? But here's where it gets really interesting. Because ethics fundamentally is always a personal issue. And when we look at the statistics, well, it paints a pretty stark picture of how we apply this ourselves, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Consider this. 84% of college students believe the U.S. is facing a business crisis, okay? Yet 59% of those same students admit to cheating on a test.
Wow, that's quite a disconnect.
It is. And in the workplace, 43% of people admit to engaging in at least one unethical act in the last year. And maybe even more staggering, 75% observe such acts and do nothing.
75% just look the other way.
Yeah. There's a profound irony here, you see. We demand integrity from the companies we invest in, the politicians we vote for, but we don't always consistently apply that same high standard in our own daily lives, when the choices are our choices. And Maxwell's bottom line here is crystal clear. Ethical companies are more profitable.
Really? Is there evidence for that?
Definitely. The Ethics Resource Center found that companies with a written commitment to social responsibility are consistently more profitable. And take the remarkable example of Johnson & Johnson. James Burke, their former chairman, shared this stat. If you invested $30,000 in a composite of the Dow Jones 30 years ago, it'd be worth about $134,000 today. But if you'd put that same $30,000 into a group of socially and ethically responsible firms, it would now be worth over $1 million.
Over $1 million. That's a huge difference.
Huge. Ethics combined with competence, it's truly a winning equation. While shortcuts might seem to pay off in the short term, they almost never do in the long run. The truth, well, it eventually comes out. Always does.
So if these ethical issues are so deeply personal and frankly pervasive, how do you, listening right now, how do you rate yourself? John C. Maxwell breaks it down into 5 categories for self-assessment. Think about it. I am always ethical, I am mostly ethical, I am somewhat ethical, I am seldom ethical, or I am never ethical. Just take a moment, be honest with yourself. Where would you place yourself on that scale?
And this leads us directly to the profound simplicity, but also the universal power of the Golden Rule. What's truly remarkable here, I think, is how consistent this truth is across humanity. Fred Smith Sr., the founder of FedEx, he once observed that a version of the Golden Rule exists in nearly every culture on Earth.
Every culture. Like what?
Well, for example, in Christianity, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. In Islam, no one of you is a believer until he loves for his neighbor what he loves for himself. And there's a powerful Yoruba proverb from Nigeria that says, one going to take a pointed stick to pinch a baby bird should first try it on himself to feel how it hurts.
Wow, that's vivid.
Isn't it? It's an almost universal moral constant. It transcends specific beliefs.
And the Josephson Institute of Ethics, they highlight 2 really crucial aspects when it comes to living ethically, right?
Yes. Exactly. First, it's the ability to clearly discern right from wrong, good from evil. You have to be able to see the difference. And second, and maybe this is even more important, it's the commitment to actually do what is right, even when that choice comes with a cost.
It's not just knowing, it's doing.
Precisely. It's not just about intellectual understanding. It's about taking action. So why should you consciously adopt the golden rule? Maxwell gives us 4 pretty compelling reasons. First, it's accepted by most people. I mean, logically, nobody wants to be treated poorly,
Oh,
right?
it seems obvious.
If you demand good treatment, you really must be prepared to give it. Any arbitrary criteria you might try to use to justify treating others differently, like, I don't know, wealth, talent, political views, it eventually just devolves into a king of the hill game. The only way to win there is by being more dominant. But the golden rule, it creates a common ground that any reasonable person can readily agree on.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second reason?
Second, it's incredibly easy to understand. Norman Cousins, the former editor and professor, he once pointed out that soft subjects like ethics, philosophy, history often turn out to be of enduring value. The golden rule takes something intangible, ethics, and makes it tangible. You don't need to study complex laws or, dense philosophical treatises.
Just put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. Simply imagine yourself in the other person's shoes. Even a child can grasp it. There are no complicated loopholes to navigate. It's straightforward. Third, it's a win-win philosophy. Think about it. If you consistently treat others as well as you desire to be treated, they win.
Okay.
And if they, in turn, treat you similarly, you win. Where's the loser in that equation?
Yeah, I see that.
It stands in stark contrast to approaches focused on, say, exploiting others for personal gain. When you live by the golden rule, the outcome is potentially always positive for everyone involved. And fourth, it's a reliable compass when you need direction. In a world full of uncertainty where trends and opinions shift constantly, the golden rule offers solid, predictable guidance. Television commentator Ted Koppel put it beautifully. There's harmony and inner peace to be found in following a moral compass that points in the same direction regardless of fashion or trend.
Inner peace, that's powerful.
It just works. It provides clear ethical guidance even in the murkiest situations.
And we've actually seen this in action, right? Truly institutionalized. Tell us about Synovus Financial Corp and their CEO, Jim Blanchard. How did he make this foundational?
Oh, Synovus Financial is a fantastic example. They were ranked #1 on Fortune's 100 best companies to work for back in 1999, and they've consistently been on that list. CEO Jim Blanchard realized he needed to apply the ethical principles he lived by personally to his whole organization.
So not just personal ethics, but company-wide.
Exactly. He made a radical decision. They literally dismantled old, cumbersome policy manuals, gone, and declared that if they had only one rule in the company, it would be the golden rule.
Just one rule.
Just one. His philosophy was, look, if they got that one rule right, all the other rules became almost unnecessary.
And did it work? What were the results?
The benefits Jim Blanchard saw at Synovus were truly remarkable, both measurable outcomes and, intangible gains. They saw significantly lower employee turnover, fewer EEOC claims, that's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and virtually no harassment issues.
Wow, that's impressive on its own.
But intangibly, they retained their very best talent. Young leaders within the company genuinely flourished. And here's the kicker.
Okay.
Synovus's stock generated the second highest return of any stock traded on the New York Stock Exchange over a 20-year period.
Second highest.
Yeah.
Just from focusing on the golden rule.
Seems like it played a huge part. It raises a really important question for you, listening now. What could adopting this single, powerful rule mean for your own work, your own life?
So thinking about this, what did you learn about morals and ethics growing up? For many, maybe the answer is not as much as previous generations did. If that foundational teaching isn't always there, how do we consciously integrate the golden rule into our everyday thinking? Maxwell argues the key is to first understand what you truly want.
Exactly right. Because once you understand how you want to be treated, well, you have the blueprint for how to treat others. It becomes clearer. And there seem to be 6 universal ways all human beings desire to be treated. These form the very foundation of the golden rule in practice.
Okay, what are they?
First, to be valued. It's actually startling to learn that 70% of people leave their jobs because they don't feel valued.
70%, that's huge.
It is. Consider Mission Controls, a company in California. Their founders, Craig Nelson, Neil Viofi, and Scott Young, make an incredible commitment. They personally go without pay during slow periods just to avoid laying off any of their 35 employees.
They go without pay.
Yeah. They understand that valuing people, not just for their output, but simply because they are human beings, is fundamental. Second, to be appreciated. We all have this deep, fundamental need to be recognized for our effort and skill. As human relations expert Donald Laird advised, always help people increase their own self-esteem. Develop your skill in making other people feel important.
Simple things matter then.
Absolutely. Simple acts like thanking people, giving them genuine credit, praising them in front of their loved ones, these can have an enormous impact. As Billy Rose put it, it's hard for a fellow to keep a chip on his shoulder if you allow him to take a bow.
I like that. What's third?
Third, to be trusted. Trust is the absolute bedrock of all strong relationships. Marriage, business partnerships, friendships, doesn't matter. Without trust, open and honest interaction is just impossible. Manchester Inc., a consulting firm, identifies key ways to build trust. Integrity, open communication, respect, doing the right thing regardless of risk.
Things that sound simple but require real effort.
Exactly. As Henry L. Stimson, former U.S. Secretary of State, wisely noted, the only way you can make a man trustworthy is by trusting him. You have to extend trust first, often. Fourth, to be respected. When others show you respect, it touches something deeper within us. It bestows dignity, builds confidence. Take Mitchell Berman, CEO of Analytics Operations Engineering. He treats his consultants as genuine partners, gives them freedom to choose projects, set hours, decide on vacation time.
Real autonomy.
Yes, he understands that respecting people this deeply gives them the autonomy and the incentive to perform at their absolute best. Fifth, to be understood. So many interpersonal problems, organizational problems too, stem from a fundamental lack of understanding.
We jump to conclusions.
We often do. We're quick to find fault when others don't conform to our expectations. But frequently, if we just make the effort to truly know them and their circumstances, we might realize their approach isn't wrong, just different. Or maybe it's a natural reaction to factors beyond their control. Theologian Hans Kung said, "Understanding someone properly involves learning from him, and learning from someone properly involves changing oneself. It's about seeking first to understand."
Then to be understood. Got it.
And the last one.
And sixth, not to be taken advantage of. Maxwell calls this his personal bottom line for ethical behavior. If people can reasonably feel you're taking advantage of them, even if you try to explain it away, your actions are likely unethical.
A gut check.
Sort of. Consider Marvin Bower, the legendary leader of McKinsey & Company. Back in the 1950s, he turned down a massive, potentially lucrative offer from billionaire Howard Hughes. Hughes wanted to help with Paramount Pictures, but Bower concluded he couldn't genuinely add value, so he simply declined.
Turned down Howard Hughes. Yep. For him, his values and integrity mattered far more than a huge paycheck. He simply wouldn't take advantage of another person, even Howard Hughes.
It really feels like some companies are genuinely relearning this lesson that Maxwell's talking about. Take Home Bank, for example, that mortgage company in Atlanta. They spent over a year and a half searching for a chief people officer, and they ultimately hired Dr. Dwight Ike Ryard, who is actually a pastor.
Oh, pastor. Interesting.
Yeah, he was specifically brought in to shepherd their corporate culture and ethical standards. It's a powerful recognition that focusing on people, treating them as you'd want to be treated, is fundamental to sustainable success.
Speaking of embodying character, let's look at Coach Mark Richt, formerly of the University of Georgia football team. When he was hired, he brought in a truly radical focus, not just on winning championships, although that was important, but on building character.
Character over just winning. In major college football.
Pretty much. He instituted men of character between the hedges classes for his players. He emphasized that developing strong character leads to diligent workers, avoids the kind of baggage that can hinder success on and off the field. What's truly fascinating here is that his mission, it really extended far beyond simply winning games. He was focused on shaping better men for life. After one tough game, he even took full responsibility for a bad call that cost his team a win, publicly apologized to his players.
Well, it takes guts.
It does. A powerful act that earned him immense respect.
Coach Richt really embodies why character counts, doesn't he? And Maxwell offers some powerful insights here, too. First, character is always more than just talk. Lots of people can talk a good game about doing the right thing, but true character is revealed through consistent action. Think of Dennis Kozlowski, the Tyco CEO, preaching frugality while, allegedly looting his own company. Big disconnect.
Huge. Second, talent is a gift, but character is a choice. You choose your faith, your attitude, and crucially, you choose your character every single day with every decision.
Third, character brings lasting success with people. Why? Because it cultivates deep trust. When you demonstrate strong character, people just instinctively know they can depend on you. It's foundational. And fourth, and this is maybe vitally important, people cannot ultimately rise above the limitations of their character.
Explain that.
No matter how brilliant someone is, how wealthy, how attractive, they can't outrun their character flaws in the long term. Character is the only true foundation for sustained success and impact. It catches up.
Okay, so if character is that crucial, how do you actively weave the golden rule into the very fabric of your life? How do you live this 24-karat gold life Maxwell talks about? First, you have to consciously adopt the golden rule as your personal integrity guideline. Be intentional about it. As Henri Frederick Amiel wisely said, don't just be an echo, be a voice. Ask yourself daily, maybe multiple times a day, how would I like to be treated in this exact situation? As Henry Ford once noted, if your principles are right, the specific area of application, business, family, whatever, it really doesn't matter. The principle holds.
Okay, adopt it.
Yeah.
Then what?
Second, make your decisions based on this guideline. It's crucial to remember that your decisions, not your external circumstances or conditions, are what truly determine your ethics. Ethical people make good choices regardless of the pressures they face. There's a powerful analogy of a father teaching his son about consequences. He has the son hammer nails into a post for bad choices, then remove them for good ones. But even when the nails are gone, the holes remain. Scars.
Actions have lasting impact.
Exactly. Don't let pressure from conformity sway you. And always remember that inaction is also a decision. Think of Cynthia Cooper at WorldCom. Stepping forward took immense courage, but not acting would also have been a choice. Third, actively manage your decisions based on this guideline. The big, obvious ethical choices might seem straightforward, but true ethics are often found in the seemingly small details, the day-to-day stuff. Consider Carol Black, CEO of Lifetime Entertainment Services. She stuck to her Stop Violence Against Women campaign despite fears it would hurt ratings.
And what happened?
Surprisingly, Lifetime had their best February ever. Or Ken Blanchard, the management expert. He faced an airfare bill that was accidentally double billed to 2 clients. Instead of pocketing the difference, he chose to bill each client half. That demonstrates ethical predictability. It builds immense trust. Living by one consistent guideline does that.
Predictability. That's key.
And fourth, ask others to hold you accountable. This one can feel uncomfortable sometimes, right?
Definitely.
But accountability is the cornerstone of integrity. Former Navy Captain Mike Abrashoff held himself to what he called the Washington Post test. He simply wouldn't do anything he wouldn't be proud to read about in the newspaper the next day.
A public standard, even if it's just internal.
Exactly. Having that external check, even if it's just imagined, that commitment to transparency is invaluable.
You see this 24-karat gold life beautifully illustrated in figures like J.C. Penney. His father instilled the golden rule in him from a very young age. There's a story about his dad making him sell pigs because their smell bothered the neighbors. A simple act of considering others first.
Wow.
Yeah. And Penny rigorously applied this principle to his business. He famously resigned from one store when he discovered they were dishonestly pricing socks. Just walked away.
Yeah.
He then went on to found his Golden Rule stores, where his guiding philosophy was literally, money is properly the byproduct of building men as partners. He truly put people in partnership ahead of just profits.
But let's be honest, living ethically isn't always easy. And it certainly doesn't always lead to an immediate happy ending, does it? Take Coach Mike Slaughter of Marquette Catholic High School. He had a championship-bound football team, undefeated, 10-0.
The dream season.
Exactly. But then 16 of his starters, including his own son, were arrested for underage drinking.
Oh, no.
Coach Slaughter had a long-standing rule about suspending players for alcohol violations. No exceptions, so he suspended them all.
All 16, including his son, for the championship run.
All 16. This led to a devastating 63-year-old loss in their big game. But he said he had no regrets. He knew he made the right decision, even though it brought huge public attention, mostly just for doing the right thing. What's really powerful there is that quiet strength, choosing integrity over perceived success or popularity.
Coach Slaughter's story really helps us understand why ethics sometimes falter, why people make compromises. John C. Maxwell identifies 5 primary factors that most often lead people down that path. First, there's pressure.
Pressure, like financial targets.
Exactly. Many corporate scandals, like Enron's complex monetization schemes, stemmed directly from immense pressure to meet increasingly unrealistic financial forecasts. Pressure can tempt us, to make rash decisions, compromise the truth, take shortcuts, break commitments, or just bow to the opinions of others to relieve it.
So how do you fight that?
Maxwell suggests using constant reminders, like family pictures on your desk, and creating strong personal systems, like writing out problems to gain clarity before acting. Helps you stay on track when the heat is on. Second factor, pleasure.
Pleasure, like hedonism.
Sort of. In our modern, often hedonistic society, the attitude of, if it feels good, do it, has fueled runaway debt, widespread divorce, addiction. M. Scott Peck's story of his bike crash illustrates this perfectly. He was unwilling to endure the slight pain or inconvenience of slowing down for a turn, which led to a much more terrible crash later. Short-term pleasure-seeking led to long-term pain.
So the solution is?
Well, actively run from temptation. Mark Twain humorously suggested the surest way is cowardice, but maybe more importantly, cultivate discipline. As Richard Foster noted, the disciplined person is the person who can do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not.
That feels like a lost art sometimes.
It does. Our generation often struggles with delaying gratification compared to, say, those who survived the Great Depression. They inherently possess that discipline. Third factor, power.
Power corrupts.
It certainly can. For many, the pursuit of power is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become, never satisfied. Executives can sometimes fall into what Harriet Rubin calls executive narcissism, believing they are the institution and can therefore take whatever they want.
Like Dr. Seuss's Yertle the Turtle.
Exactly, the Yertle the Turtle syndrome.
Yeah.
The king turtle continuously stacks his subjects higher and higher, just for a better view, until the entire unstable structure inevitably collapses. Power tends to follow a predictable cycle: reception, abuse, and then inevitable loss. Image is fleeting, character endures.
Harry Truman said something about that, didn't he?
He did. He wisely observed that if a man mistakenly thinks he is the cause of the power, that can be his ruination. Believing your own hype. Fourth factor, pride.
Not just healthy pride in your work.
No, an exaggerated or unhealthy sense of self-worth. That can be incredibly destructive. The book of Proverbs constantly warns us, pride goes before destruction. C.S. Lewis explained it insightfully. He said, pride is essentially competitive, is competitive by its very nature. It only finds pleasure in having more of it than the next man.
So it's always comparing.
Always comparing. If your goal is just to always be richer, smarter, or better looking than everyone else, your focus becomes entirely self-absorbed. That makes consistent ethical behavior nearly impossible. Pride essentially blinds you to your faults, others' needs, ethical pitfalls, and the fifth factor, priorities, or maybe a lack of clear ones.
How does that lead to unethical choices?
As the great German writer Goethe famously said, things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. Jim Collins' research on highly successful companies consistently found they built their success on a bedrock of clearly defined core values, priorities.
And Maxwell had a personal story about this.
He did. He recounts a deeply personal ethical crisis early in his career that forced him to fundamentally reprioritize his life. God first, family second, and work a distant third. If your values are undefined, you significantly increase your risk of making poor, unethical decisions when things get tough.
It's interesting you haven't mentioned greed much. Isn't that usually cited as the main cause?
Yeah, exactly. While greed certainly gets all the headlines and scandals, Maxwell argues it's often not the primary cause. It's more like a symptom. People often pursue money for the power it brings, or the pleasure it can buy, or maybe the pride of possessions.
So links back to the other five.
Precisely. So these five deeper issues, pressure, pleasure, power, pride, and misplaced priorities, are often the actual underlying drivers behind most ethical compromises. And he consistently reiterates that there's a far greater satisfaction that comes from upholding your integrity, even if that sometimes requires patience and sacrifice in the short term. This brings us to a really crucial point, I think. The real golden opportunity in life isn't necessarily external. It's not just finding a new job or a hot investment or some untouched market niche. It's fundamentally internal. It's about changing who you are.
It's a powerful idea.
It is. As C.S. Lewis so wisely observed, good and evil both increase at compound interest. Small, seemingly insignificant ethical decisions you make today, they pave the way for much bigger victories or much deeper pitfalls tomorrow. They compound.
Okay, so how do you actively develop that strong character? How do you truly position yourself for these genuine golden opportunities that come from within? First, Maxwell says, take full responsibility for your actions. Own them.
No blaming.
Right. Avoid the traps of blaming circumstances or past problems or other people. As Winston Churchill famously stated, responsibility is truly the price of greatness. Second, develop personal discipline. We talked about this with pleasure, but it's foundational. Without it, as H. Jackson Brown vividly put it, talent without discipline is like an octopus on roller skates. Lots of motion, but no real direction or control.
Huh. That's a great image.
Isn't it? You need to discipline your time, your energy, your goals, even your moods. Vince Lombardi, the legendary coach, embraced discipline, saw it as absolutely essential for anyone worth his salt. Third, know your weaknesses. Be honest with yourself.
Why is that important for ethics?
Because to be forewarned is truly to be forearmed. Theodore Roosevelt, who was sickly as a child, transformed himself into a vigorous president, partly by consciously confronting his physical weaknesses. Knowing your vulnerabilities helps you proactively guard against ethical lapses in those areas. Fourth, align your priorities with your core values. We touched on this too. Integrity, at its heart, means your beliefs and your actions consistently line up.
Walk the talk.
Exactly. If you say one thing and do another, you fundamentally lack integrity. As Abraham Lincoln famously asserted, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Define your values, then commit to living them every single day. Fifth, admit wrongdoing quickly and genuinely ask for forgiveness. This is tough for many people.
Especially leaders, maybe.
Perhaps. Contrast the pervasive cover-ups at Enron, Tyco, WorldCom, or even Senator Robert Torricelli's self-righteousness during his issues. Contrast that with Harry Kramer, CEO of Baxter International. When his company's products were linked to patient deaths, he immediately recalled them, launched investigations, extended sincere condolences to families, and even took a personal bonus reduction.
Wow. That's taking responsibility.
Big time. He was described as relentlessly authentic. He acted with profound integrity, even when it cost his company $189 million. Sixth, take extra care with your finances. Money reveals character.
And Ford said it unmasks people.
He did. It shows who you really are. So strive to earn money honestly. Be scrupulously honest in all dealings. Be consistently generous. And use credit wisely. Avoid becoming the lender's slave, as King Solomon warned. Calvin Coolidge famously put it, "There is no dignity quite so impressive and no independence quite so important as living within your means."
Simple wisdom.
Seventh, put your family ahead of your work. This might seem counterintuitive for career success to some.
Yeah, the narrative is often sacrifice family for work.
But many people mistakenly do that, only to find it undermines their long-term success and happiness. NDA coach Pat Riley emphasized, "Sustain a family for a long period of time, and you can sustain success for a long period of time." A strong, stable, loving family provides a contented and essential landing place in life. It fuels you, it doesn't drain you, ideally.
Makes sense. And the last one, number 8.
And eighth, place high value on people. This is truly the very essence of the golden rule, distilled down. Wolf J. Rinke's statistic is compelling. If you mistrust your employees, you'll be right 3% of the time. If you trust people until they give you a reason not to, you'll be right 97% of the time.
97%. Trust pays off.
It seems so. Consider Mike Abershoff again, captain of the USS Benfold. He shifted his focus from personal gold braid promotion to the golden rule. He took the time to individually interview every single sailor on his ship. Then he implemented changes to add genuine value to their lives based on what they told him.
Really listened.
Really listened. And it led to unprecedented success for the USS Benfold. Abershoff himself said, "I put people instead of promotion first. And as a result, I was paid 1,000 times over, not just in money, but in results and respect."
Thinking about that, the ancient Greek myth of King Midas comes to mind. His touch turned everything to gold, right? But it ultimately led to isolation, unhappiness. He couldn't eat, couldn't embrace his loved ones. It really makes you wonder, what is real gold in life? What truly matters?
And that Maxwell beautifully redefines the true Midas touch based on that. It's not about merely acquiring wealth, turning things to gold for yourself. It's profoundly about adding value to others. As Henry Ward Beecher once said, "It is not what we take up, but what we give up that makes us rich." True. Enduring wealth comes from how you genuinely interact with people and what you choose to give, not just take.
So how do you actively develop this kind of Midas touch, this ability to add value? Maxwell offers 5 pretty profound practices for living that kind of life. First, treat people better than they treat you. Maxwell actually calls this the platinum rule, going beyond the golden rule.
Better than they treat me, even if they're difficult.
Yeah, this isn't just about common courtesy. It goes far beyond. History is littered with petty disputes, like a war that started over a well bucket or another over a broken teapot that just escalated into full-blown conflicts because nobody chose the high road.
It takes real strength of character to rise above negative behavior directed at you. As Martin Luther King Jr. profoundly stated, "Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a permanent attitude."
I'm reminded of Maxwell's own father. When asked about someone who had spoken ill of him, his father simply reiterated, "I think he's a fine man." He chose to consistently speak well of others, regardless.
Wow, that's taking the high road. Okay, what's second?
Second, walk the second mile. Do more than is expected.
Like the Roman soldier story.
Exactly. In the Roman Empire, a soldier could legally compel any civilian to carry his load for 1 mile. To voluntarily walk the second mile was to go above and beyond what was required. It was a choice. Oprah Winfrey offers a powerful insight here. Doing my best at this present moment puts me in the best place for the next moment. Give your all now.
And Zig Ziglar's famous line.
There's no traffic jam on the extra mile. If you consistently do more than is expected of you, you'll inevitably rise above the crowd. And often you'll help others rise with you by setting that example. Third, help people who can't possibly help you back.
That cuts against our competitive culture, doesn't it? We often think, what's in it for me?
It really does. We live in such a competitive culture, often defining our success by how much better we are than the next person. But as John Bunyan wisely said, you have not lived today successfully unless you've done something for someone who can never repay you.
That makes you think.
Doesn't it? The inspiring example of bobsledder's Eugenio Monti comes to mind. At the 1964 Winter Olympics, he famously gave a bolt from his own sled to his competitor, Tony Nash, whose team was sidelined and couldn't compete without it.
He gave his competitor a part mid-Olympics.
Yep. Nash went on to win gold. Monti, remarkably, placed third. He did it not for personal gain, but out of a profound belief in fair competition and, well, human connection. Fourth, do right when it's natural to do wrong, when the temptation or pressure is high.
That takes real character strength.
It demands strong character, absolutely. But the rewards, though maybe not always immediate, can be remarkable. Think of Ronald Reagan's persistence in improving Soviet relations. Even after receiving a famously cold reception to his initial attempts, he kept trading.
Peggy Noonan insightfully noted that true strength often allows one to make the first conciliatory move, to be the bigger person.
While doing the right thing isn't always rewarded instantly, doing wrong, well, it never, ever brings a good long-term reward. Never. And fifth, keep your promises, even when it hurts.
This feels like the bedrock of trust again.
It's the absolute cornerstone of strong relationships and enduring business success. Charles Brewer, founder of Mindspring Enterprises, made promise-keeping foundational to his company. We make commitments with care and then live up to them no matter what.
But didn't you say a study found promise-keeping low on people's values list?
Sadly, yes. A study by Dr. Pat Lynch found promise-keeping at the very bottom of people's stated workplace values. Yet Joseph Fabrici of CVS notes that in sales, integrity means everything. It's essential.
The classic example here is Sir Walter Scott. After his publishing company accrued an enormous debt, £114,000, a fortune back then, he wrote tirelessly to pay it off, even from his deathbed.
From his deathbed.
Yeah. He simply would not let pain or even death stop him from keeping his word, from fulfilling his obligation. That's commitment. You know, to truly illustrate who possesses this real Midas touch adding value to others, let's try 2 quick quizzes for you listening. First quiz. Try to name the 5 wealthiest people in the world right now, or maybe the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners, or the last 5 Miss America winners. That's actually harder than you'd think for most people.
It often is surprisingly difficult to recall these highly accomplished individuals off the top of your head. Okay, now for the second quiz. Can you name 3 teachers who genuinely inspired you? Or maybe 3 friends who helped you through a really difficult time? Or 5 people who truly taught you something worthwhile, something that stuck?
That feels much easier for most people, doesn't it? Those names often come right to mind.
Exactly. That second quiz, the people you can easily name there. That reveals who truly added lasting value to your life, who had the real Midas touch.
It really is about creating a legacy that genuinely outlives you. Like Maxwell's father-in-law, Clayton Porter. He was a teacher who impacted thousands of students over his career. He instilled moral and ethical foundations not just by teaching principles, but by truly living them, day in, day out.
A living example. Absolutely. When he passed away, the room was filled with hundreds of people whose lives he had fundamentally changed for the better. That, you see, that kind of impact is a legacy far beyond any material wealth. It lasts. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, you're now presented with really 2 fundamental paths, 2 ways to approach achievement and success in your life. You can consciously choose to go for the gold, focusing primarily on acquisition and status, or you can choose to go for the golden rule, focusing on integrity and adding value to others.
And there's a powerful historical warning here to consider. Back in 1923, some of the wealthiest men in the entire world gathered for a meeting in Chicago. Collectively, they controlled more money than the entire U.S. Treasury at the time. They had unequivocally gone for the gold, big time.
Titans of industry.
Absolutely. But their fates, tragically stark. Charles Schwab, president of the largest independent steel company, died broke. Arthur Cutten, a brilliant wheat speculator, died insolvent. Richard Whitney, president of the New York Stock Exchange, died shortly after being released from Sing Sing prison. Albert Fall, a cabinet member, pardoned from prison just to die at home.
This is grim.
It is. And 3 others, including the president of the Bank of International Settlements and the head of the world's greatest monopoly at the time, they committed suicide. It's just a stark illustration of the potential difference between short-term gains and long-term outcomes, where going for the gold alone can lead.
The differences between these two paths become profoundly clear when you lay them out. People who primarily go for the gold often ask, "What can you do for me?" Their decisions tend to be based on convenience. They might sacrifice family for financial gain. They often operate with a me-first mindset, and ultimately they count their dollars.
And the contract.
Those who choose to go for the golden rule consistently ask, "What can I do for you?" Their decisions are character-based, not just convenient. They're willing to sacrifice finances for family, they prioritize relationships, they cultivate an others-first mindset, and ultimately, they count their friends, their impact. Their true worth is based on their values, not just their fleeting wealth.
And the compounding, lasting benefits of truly living the golden rule, you see them in stories like Howard Bowen's. He built many Kmart stores. Early in his career, he was invited to go to a strip club with some Kmart executives, a group he knew was crucial for potentially securing a huge $40 million contract.
Huge pressure situation.
Massive pressure, but he quietly declined. He prioritized his integrity and his respect for his wife over the potential deal.
What happened with the contract?
Surprisingly, the executive later awarded him the contract anyway, said something like, "You have no idea how much I respect you for that decision." His integrity won the day. Years later, Howard paid a steel subcontractor early when they were facing severe cash flow problems. Just helped them out.
A second-mile action.
Exactly. A decade after that, Howard needed urgent steelwork for his own home during a booming construction period when everyone was busy, that very same contractor. He immediately put other lucrative work on hold to help Howard. He simply said, "You helped me out when I had cash flow problems. I'll never forget that." Howard hadn't even thought about it in 10 years. But the contractor remembered. That's the power, the ripple effect of the golden rule.
So, final thought here is pretty provocative. While going for the gold might indeed get you some gold, some material success, going for the golden rule gives you a chance to truly have it all: monetary wealth and those invaluable benefits that money simply cannot buy. Respect, trust, strong relationships, peace of mind, a lasting legacy. The choice ultimately is yours.